folks, happy Monday. We are here. We're here to talk about some hockey. Some rather impactful events occurred over, Friday and over the weekend. Some of the restricted free agents are beginning to trickle in. Thank God we don't have to talk about the Mitch Marner saga other than the aftermath of it today, and then it'll just be whatever he does on the ice. But we're going to talk about, again, some seasonal bizarre food out there, and the death of a couple rather notable musicians. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so let's talk about the musicians first. We'll start with Eddie Money because he passed first. Interesting how a lot of people have a view of you that, well, if I only know a couple of songs, he didn't have a lot of good songs. And it's like, here's the thing about Eddie Money. Was he a superstar? No. But did he have a distinguishable voice?
Mm-hmm.
When he sang and you knew it was him? Yes. He was a Long Island guy. Maybe that's why I liked him a little more. I admit it. But he also was a New York City cop that turned himself into a singer.
Yeah.
He had some great hits. I know everybody knows two Tickets to Paradise, but Baby Hold On and Shakin'. And, when you really think about it, he's probably got 8 really good songs.
5 or 6 that are, I would consider, hits and very recognizable.
Right. And I think that's good over a career. Like, don't get carried away with people like Phil Collins or hit makers or whatever. And he had a career before he started having hits too. Like, people knew him before we knew him. You know what I mean? He had been on the road for a while.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, he's not a megastar.
No.
I mean, and remember, he had a sort of second, like a rebirth when MTV came around.
Yeah.
He had Shakin' and does it Take Me Home Tonight,
mm-hmm.
which is a ripoff on Be My Little Baby because he had Ronnie Spector.
He had her in the song, and
right, so it wasn't really a ripoff.
Yeah.
So again, he's not a megastar, and we're not pretending that he is, but he's a notable musician. And by the way, his real name was Eddie Mahoney, so he changed it to Eddie Money, which is a good hook. Now, the other one, and last night I was writing an article, and just then after getting it done, scanned through Twitter and saw that Rick Ocasek passed away. And wasn't it just this past year, Russ, that the Cars were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So good timing there that they got it in, but have to say, like, I was not a monster Cars fan, but I liked them a lot. They, enough to buy their greatest hits, and they had a number of good hits. And a fairly important band in the mid to late 70s. But Russ, I was taken aback by what you said about. I didn't realize he was 75 years old.
Me neither. Yeah. Obviously, he had been around for a while before we knew him. I'll tell you what, growing up on the island. And you forget that they technically are a 70s band because their first album.
They totally are.
Yeah. But late 70s. And
new wave. I'd say new wave. You put them in.
The Candio album was massive in my area. And I remember having it on cassette. And, the Let's Go song was completely different, really, from anything you had heard. Now,
right.
I know that there were detractors at the time because they were thinking it was a little too poppy. But it was an interesting sound for me, and that was what Rick Ocasek was all about. He had sort of like haunting sort of vocals and a different sound on guitar, and that band was a good band. Like, they weren't fantastic, right? I mean, at Live Aid, they were really good, but you could tell that they had some studio help back in those days, and that enhanced their sound. But they still were good live. The interesting thing about Ocasek is that people forget. Is that when the Cars kind of stopped for a while, I remember they sent me a solo album of his. I have it somewhere, and it was good. I thought the material was really good because he was really the force behind it. And even their band was really good. I remember even John Anderson worked with Elliot Easton. They actually had a song together. So the Cars were pretty influential. People just, I guess, have this weird look about them. Some do, about their pop history, but they're a rock band. They are.
Yeah, I mean, and you being in the music industry, I'll get your point of view on this. I mean, they were sort of, like I said, they were part of the new wave. I don't know, but somebody in the chat was saying there was a little punk influence there. I'm not sure. I mean, that may be going a little far because they really went to sort of a pop MTV type of music late in the 80s. You know, Drive was a big monster hit with Ben Orr singing, and a couple of their later hits were very, very poppy, but a good band. And I have to say, one of my highlight moments of my youth, and you'll probably know where I'm going here.
Oh no, I hope we're not going where I think you're going.
Was the song "Moving in Stereo"?
Oh, okay.
And Phoebe Cates in the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It was almost as much the song, because it was such a really cool sounding song, as it was, you know, a 17-year-old Phoebe.
Now, I would have
let's just leave it there. This is a family rated podcast.
No, but I would have I didn't even go there.
No.
That song was just cool, Ek, because in your car stereo, when moving in stereo, kind of switched the speakers, and not a lot of bands did that. That's what I liked about it.
It saturated your speakers.
Yeah,
I mean, I never was a huge fan of theirs, but you know, I obviously appreciate what they did, and the funny thing, remembering them back into like the late 70s, early 80s, I do really remember them actually starting off more of like an artsy type band. You know, like especially because I hung out with a lot of artists who ended up going to, like, you know, Moore School of Art in Philly, or, you know, and just a group of friends of mine who I hung out with. They were huge Cars fans. But they were, you know, this is when we were like 13, 14 years old, you know, just like this was, which would have been right around 80, 81, 82, somewhere in there. And yeah, they were really into them. And then they definitely, like, they shunned them kind of when they turned poppy, and there was a whole world there. But people forget a lot of those bands that did turn pop in the MTV era, like the Cars did, you know, definitely didn't all start off that way, for sure. And they were definitely a little bit more, not edgy, but more artsy, I think is the right word to use.
Yeah, no, and you know, but the funny thing is, and I can't remember where I read it, but there was an article recently that talked about the fact that, you know, within the next 10 years, most of the rock gods are going to die. And and unfortunately, you know, I mean, that's a sort of macabre subject, but I mean, look at it, you know, like most of them. I mean, I went to go see Steve Hackett on Thursday, the guitar player for Genesis, and he's not like Pete Townsend or a rock god, but he was a significant member of a great band, and he's 69 years old, and he's still great. But Rick Ocasek is 75.
Yeah.
Daltrey and Townsend are in their 70s. McCartney's in his mid to late 70s. All of these guys are in their, you know, late 60s and 70s, and they lived hard lives. So, you know, it's something.
Well, Paul lived 2 lives.
What's that?
Except for Paul McCartney, he lived 2 lives.
Yeah, no, that's true. I am the Walrus.
It's funny how you have, like, you know, they were even old for us, you know, like they were before our, like, the bands that came out in the 60s, you know, like we were barely alive in the 60s. Some of us weren't even alive in the 60s. So, you know, that was even, you know, that they were old for us. It's funny how I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, you know, they find that the group of musicians, the group of bands that you don't really know very well, are the group that the people that are 10 years old, 10 years younger than you know really well, but not like, so, you know, like a group that maybe is around now that you're into. And then there's this one like group, like for me, it's like that Jimmy Eat World type part of music world that I just, you know, that, like, for example, like Ty Anderson would just be all over. Right. But he's like, you know, that's just a little bit like 10 to, you know, 15 years younger than us. Ty's probably even more than that. But
I'll tell you what's keeping rock alive, though, Ek. What's keeping rock alive are the indie bands, the older metal bands, and the older punk bands. Like, as an example, I just bought tickets for that Hella Mega tour for Green Day, Fall Out Boy, and Weezer. And when I saw that they were getting together, my first thought was, that's like Monsters of Rock kind of tour. And that's exactly what Billy Joel was pushing when he put it together. And as long as those things keep happening, rock won't die.
So, you know, thinking about that, the best thing to ever happen to rock and classic rock is, one, that bubble has the listening demographic audience. As it ages, it's all moving in sync with each other, right? Mm-hmm. But the other thing that's really interesting about it is casinos. Casinos
they are
single-handedly kept the ability for these guys to go out, make a decent living, tour, cover costs, and still play music. Without the casino circuit, we aren't seeing 50% of these acts.
Yeah, well, it's weird. And last thing on this, it's weird because on Saturday I was debating whether to go up to Toronto to see King Crimson on their 50th anniversary tour, and looked at the lineup. And Russ, I think we talked about this. And other than Tony Levin, who's a phenomenal bass player, and Fripp, there's none of the original lineup. So it's really a bunch of guys from the last 5 or 6 years.
And 3 drummers. 3.
Yeah, and 3 drummers to make up for 1 Bill Bruford.
They should just be called the Robert Fripp Project, though, that band.
Right.
They really aren't anything beyond Robert Fripp, and then Tony Levin's probably the only other.
Right. And I was going to say, I was going to say, it's like, okay, I was going to go for the pure reason of, at least I can say I saw King Crimson, but I can't say that I would have because it wasn't King Crimson. But they were playing at the Budweiser stage up in Toronto, which used to be called Molson Amphitheater, right along Lake Ontario, which is like a 15,000 seat venue with a lawn. And there were tickets going for $6.
Yeah,
that's way overshooting their world right now.
Right. And you're right, Peter. They should be playing casinos with 3,000 or 4,000 seat venues.
Those guys get embarrassed to play casinos, though.
You got to get to that point. There's a really interesting article about 5 years ago with Mike Reno from Loverboy, Vancouver band, but he lives in Palm Springs, and he does this thing. He says it's the best thing ever. He goes, the fans who come and see us love us. He goes, look where I'm living. He goes, I'm doing all right doing this. He goes, I maybe have to work 100 days a year, and I've got no complaints. He goes, it's a great situation. And yeah, you may have to eat a little bit of ego on that.
Where are they going? I mean, let's.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, wherever he's playing, it's got to be a big stage, Peter.
Because I'm not seeing Loverboy.
No, but I mean, that's in the summer. I mean, they are the perfect thing.
It's like I attack Peter's sensibilities now.
You're attacking a hometown Vancouver band.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
You don't want to turn me loose.
No, I said Mike Reno has gotten so big that he should be called Mike Vegas.
Oh my God.
Well, this summer, we're the perfect time, target audience for these things because our vacation place is down, just 5 miles from Atlantic City. My wife and I were sitting on the beach or whatever, and a plane will fly by carrying a big thing saying "Yes, Asia" tonight at the, at the the Borgata Casino or whatever, and we're off. We're off to it. It's just like that. We're like, and you go, and it is a lot of people. It does have its limit. I think there's a limit. I couldn't take Yes the whole thing of it. I couldn't do it. It was they did play too long and stuff like that, just for what you're looking for in that kind of situation. But it's still. I mean, it is great to have those bands still playing. And it is amazing. Some of them are still very good. There's a big difference, though. There's a big variance. When a guy gets over his 70s, there's some people who can still play, and there's some people who can't.
Yeah.
That's why the Anderson, Rabin, Wakeman is really the one you would be able to hear the whole time. It's a completely different sound.
Yeah, and you have to accept that the fact that some of these artists are either the bands have broken up or some of them are gone. That you're not going to see the original lineups. It's like I had a phenomenal time seeing Steve Hackett last Thursday, but the lead singer of his band is the same guy who sang the song Cotton Eye Joe. So it's not exactly like you saw Gabriel. So and you have to accept that.
Wow.
Although I would pay money to see Gabriel sing Cotton Eye Joe. But you know what? That would be like a ridiculously weird rendition.
Yeah, he poured out a lot of violins. Where did you come from? Where did you go?
Oh God, no.
Oh my God, is that?
We gotta get out of this. We're going down a bad hole.
We're in a vortex of crap. Here we go.
All right, what is today? It's the 16th. I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm feeling a lot better, guys. Thanks, but this was like the worst flu I've ever had in my life. It really, literally, and I feel like such a freaking complainer. But when I can tell you that. My wife didn't leave the house for 190 hours.
Oh my God.
And she never gets sick. That's how rough I was the one who was at the end of the day, it was like, I'm the only one who's less likely to kill the kids. So I was still driving the kids around. But it was oh my God. But now it's in my voice. Now it's in my throat, but my fever is thankfully gone.
Oh, good.
All right, here we go. Ready? Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, September 16th. 2019.
I'm Michael Agello, and the Buffalo Bills are 2-0.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Peter Tessier in mild Vancouver.
And I'm Macklin. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. Now with a lot less Mitch Marner talk.
Not yet.
Well,
after today,
after today.
a lot less Mitch Marner talk.
Yes.
But we do have to start there because that is the biggest news that happened since we saw you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we all have opinions. I guess we should go to our Maple Leafs writer to start this off. Mike, what do you think?
Well, the victory for the Leafs is that they got Marner signed long term. They got him signed for less than Austin Matthews and less than John Tavares, which I think was necessary for Kyle Dubas because, again, Tavares and Matthews are centers and Marner is a winger. But in giving him a $10.893 million AAV for 6 years, you've made him the second highest paid winger in the NHL, ahead of Patrick Kane, ahead of Mark Stone, ahead of MVP Nikita Kucherov, and only behind Artemi Panarin, who was a UFA this year. Needless to say, I'm sure 5 or 6 general managers right now would like to take out Kyle Dubas and beat him over the head because of this contract, but the Leafs don't care because they have their own internal cap calculations, and they were taken to the wall by Darren Ferris, and in the end, I think they made the best deal that they possibly could. But you can't ignore the fact that you have 4 forwards right now in Tavares, Matthews, Marner, and Nylander that you're paying over 50% of the salary cap to. And I basically what's going to happen, they're praying right now that the cap goes up in the next couple of years. It probably won't go up next year, but it probably will go up significantly in 2 years.
It will.
That they are going to be able to bring up some of their young players on entry-level contracts that will alleviate some of the cap crunch.
Yeah.
They'll dip into European free agency and all these things to, college free agency to bring in talent. They'll have to draft better and develop better, which I think they've been doing the last few years. But it really puts a crunch on them in the sense that this is it. There is going to be no trading at the deadline. There is not going to be any hot stove regarding Toronto because they simply don't have the room. They used up all their room. They traded for David Clarkson to give them enough space to fit the 4 contracts, putting Horton and Clarkson under LTIR. And next year, with 3 unrestricted free agent defensemen, at most they're going to be able to sign 1, probably not 2, which means Tyson Barrie is a 1-year rental. And if you want to open up more space, then you're going to probably have to trade a guy like either Kapanen or Nylander, and that will be the discussion going forward on what they have to do. But the only thing, and I want to get Peter and Russ's thought on this, the only thing that I'm concerned about, because, these guys are in the prime of their career or just entering their prime, they're all great players, is that you remember back after they won their cup, after the lockout, the missed year, Tampa Bay, and I don't remember the exact percentage, but they had Lecavalier, Richards, St. Louis, and Dan Boyle occupying something like 50% of their, or pretty close, and they could not put a team around them to provide enough of a support structure. And then I think Hobby Bullen got hurt, so there was not enough around them to make them competitive. Now the Leafs have signed a lot of players. Locked up Kerfoot, Kapanen, Janssen. They've got that core there for at least a couple years. That's the difference. But I'm still concerned about you putting so much a percentage of the cap on 3 or 4 players, which they are now in that position.
Yeah, I've got 2 quickie things. So the first one is I think they have maxed out what Mitch Marner's worth is because he's not getting 94 points every year. I don't believe that'll happen every year. So that's one thing. Although if he averages around 85, it'll be worth it. I think that's what he has to sort of average around to really be the second best winger in the league, to be honest, because right now Kane is ahead of him and Kucherov is ahead of him. Only based on years of work, not because of ability. The other thing is Ferris needs to just cool it, man. I
want to throw my 2 cents.
Yeah, I was going to wait until we went around.
I know, but I can't. It's just I have to start it because it's just. And Peter's going to go soon, so he may want to say something. The point is, you don't need to leak out that at least 2 teams had offer sheets because the whole world knew that Mitch Marner would never sign an offer sheet.
Exactly.
So it's a moot point. If you're trying to make your guy look good now, I don't think you did that. I think all you did was try to bring attention to yourself, and I think it looks bad. It's a bad look.
Go ahead, Peter.
You know, when things have been so played out in the media, believed to be contentious at times, and I haven't read the 9 articles on the front page of TSN's website about this. I've just sort of been skimming some things. I think Mitch Marner, from what I've seen, has sort of maybe played down the level of contentiousness that existed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you come out of a deal like this, the last thing you probably need to do is start talking about some of the inner workings on what your tactics or strategy or addressing stuff.
Right.
All Darren Ferris had to say was, there was talk of offer sheets. We looked at it as part of our general tactics and due diligence in doing what's best for Mitch.
Right.
That's all you had to say.
Yep.
But if I'm a person going in to another contract dispute, to contract negotiation with Darren Ferris, I'm going to proceed really cautiously, because I don't know if you can trust that he will keep what should be confidential, what should be done in good faith, silent later on. And what I also don't know is, what's he telling other people? If he's willing to do that, what's he saying privately?
Yeah,
that's where my concern would be.
Go ahead.
I had well, just before you go back, one thing I wanted to say is after I saw the number and all the back and forth that we went through for a summer, every Maple Leafs fan and Torontonian owes the rest of the world an apology for the BS we lived through this summer, because that was just to arrive at that, which was basically where everyone said it was going to be. Voila, look at that.
And
you're actually right.
But you also have to blame Ferris for that too, and maybe Marner for a bit, because according to the reports, the Leafs offered him the Tavares deal as recently as when we were in Vancouver for the draft. Okay. 7 years, $77 million, $11 million per. They didn't want to go 7 years, and that's why they were shooting for that 3-year deal. And only late last week, when Marner and had a face-to-face with Dubas, did it get to the point of, well, I want to be here for 6 years. But go ahead, Ek. I want to talk about Ferris after you make your comment.
Yeah, no, I mean, first off, on the deal, I think it's crazy, but I think it's a circumstantial situation that they had, that Dubas had very little choice in. Obviously, the Nylander. I mean, the difference between Line and Rantanen and Point is the fact that those teams didn't have Nylander last year. That's why they haven't been signed, because the situation with Nylander last year, missing so much time, really put Dubas in a situation where if that happened again, he would have looked really, really bad, and he would have gone through the exact same thing again, which obviously affected the Leafs last year. To a point. I mean, maybe they get a different. Maybe if maybe they get a better playoff seed or something like that. Maybe they avoid the Bruins in the first round, but not likely. So,
well, they would have had home ice advantage probably.
Yeah, right. Maybe they get home ice. But I think the thing that really gets to me is, he's worth whatever he can get. If Marner can get this, he can get this. It's fine. He's a really solid, great forward. He's among the top 10 wingers in the league, but I'm going to say he's in the top 3, like he is, like those people saying, in top 5. I need to see more than just 1 year to say he's top 10. I mean, Kucherov is so far ahead of him in my mind, and Patrick Kane might be right about even with him right now, because Kane sort of has slowed down a little bit. But there's other forwards coming too, so it's a tricky one to rank. But I think that the Ferris stuff is ridiculous on many levels, and I also think that there have been some calculated leaks out there, saying, okay, the 2 teams that made the offer sheets were Minnesota and Columbus. It wasn't Minnesota. I checked in on that. And I don't believe it was Columbus. I really don't.
No, well, I and I know you have connections with Columbus, but it had been reported over the
reported. Yeah, I know, but
by Aaron Portzline, by Elliot Friedman, and it does make sense in the sense that now they may not.
Let's talk about what an actual offer sheet is, okay? Because Because I mean, I know Portsline says that Columbus consider, and I think Columbus would consider this, but let's talk about the difference between, he was actually being like, here is an offer sheet to you.
No. Nobody is saying that. But what they're saying is there was the discussion of parameters, and the report was from Portsline and Elliot Friedman that they wanted to present an offer sheet for 7 years, and that Marner's camp would not agree to it because they wanted deals that were shorter. So that's the problem here. Like, we don't
buy into any of this stuff. I mean, guys, this is just Mike. First of all, it's pointless. But beyond pointless, it is just absolutely. It's a spin machine, like right now, and I don't buy any of this. Like, I think that. I mean, at the end of the day, there were other teams too that talked to them about, about possibly putting an offer sheet together. And like Russ said, he wasn't going to sign anywhere else. So,
and that's the problem I have with it is, yes, it's pointless, but this is being Darren Ferris didn't do this by the way, like in some interview, he did it on TSN radio this morning with everybody listening. And he did it for one reason. He wanted to bolster the appearance that Mitch Marner was never going to leave Toronto, but we've known that. That's why this whole thing was a farce.
I mean, ask yourself this question: would Craig Leopold, going through what he was going through with Paul Fenton, have allowed this to happen? I mean,
yeah, is Paul Fenton going to sign on? And plus, Minnesota didn't have the room. They had
so Minnesota doesn't make any sense. Columbus, if they made any sense, I don't buy this 7-year deal thing. If it made any sense at all, Columbus would have been like one of those teams that tried for like the really short, high deals.
You know who would have made sense? Philadelphia would have made sense because they had a ton of cap space in July.
Well, the Flyers wanted to, and they talked about it a ton, but they didn't do it either. And I mean, and to the point where there were people. I remember just last year at the outdoor game with the Penguins, people telling me that I really trust in the Flyers organization that they were going to make an offer sheet for Mitch Marner, and I said, geez, I don't think that makes any sense.
Really not Flipper style though.
I think the closest team that may have been in there was the Islanders, to be honest. And I think that's the one team that if there was a team that was actually getting somewhere and trying to make this offer sheet, I think it was the Islanders. And I think that Lou believed he could possibly convince Marner to come there.
Go ahead.
But no, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And like you said, let's stop with this spin machine stuff. Let's this Ferris is really killing himself here because teams aren't going to want to deal with him. And although at the end of the day, he got players are still going to hire him because he got almost $11 million from Mitch Marner.
Right.
That's a hell of a deal. I mean, he's a good player, but like you said, Mike, 4 players. But
it has been reported, and this is the thing. That Ferris was using this whole thing as a attention getting maneuver when it's been reported he got Marner as a client because he took a less percentage than other agents. So this was a big thing for him. It was a big splash move.
No, and that's not uncommon either. That
right. I'm not saying, but he's using this for all that it's worth. I mean, he's drumming up business by this deal because honestly, the last couple deals, and we talked about him before, Athanasiou and Josh Anderson, he was embarrassed because he had them hold out for most of training camp or early into the regular season, and he got nothing for them.
Yeah,
nothing.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Like you say, they only have a goalie. They don't have a real backup goalie on that team yet. They don't have a, they have defense this year. This year is a big window for them because they've got all these guys.
Yeah.
Next year it changes big time for Toronto. So the pressure's big time on the Leafs right now to make this happen, and they might. I mean, they're going to be
pressure every year for them.
Yes,
I know, but this year they definitely have a window that's going to be different next year.
Well, they have a window of 2. They have a window of 3 years right now with Riley under contract, Frederik Andersen for 2, all their forwards, and it's the defense again. As somebody said, what's my fascination with trading William Nylander? Well, I think this team needs defense to win a championship. And honestly, they're not trading Tavares, they're not trading Marner, they're not trading Matthews. Who's the next highest paid forward, and who would they have to clear out salary wise to re-sign Barry or to re-sign Muzzin? It probably is William Nylander. But we're not going to worry about that now. That's next summer.
He better play a hell of a lot better this year.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't play a hell of a lot better this year, there's no way in the world they're going to
Well, the Leafs are hoping he plays better because if that's their goal, they need him to be.
Oh, they
more
need him to play
valuable.
better for every reason possible, of course, but
Right.
more than anything to help him this year. But yeah, he's got to really turn around this year. Let's move on to Patrick Laine while we have Peter for a minute here. The Patrick Laine situation, which I was told actually over the weekend was getting pretty close to a bridge deal, is now again kind of in shambles to a degree. Laine has arrived in Bern, Switzerland as well. I've seen a game there before. It's a fun place to play hockey and watch hockey, but that's not where Laine wants to be. And so now, the whole concept of the 3-year deal, which I thought was going to happen with Laine, and I thought Laine's deal would follow more along a McAvoy's type of deal, and less along Marner's deal. As right now, the bridge thing is apparently done, and the Laine camp is asking for at least 5 to 6 years. Peter, what do you think?
Which is good news, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
The problem is what do you value him at 5 to 6 years?
Yep.
And that's where everything's going to become a problem. I'm glad Laine's gone to do something. He's not sort of sitting around just showing up at the odd workout and stuff. I want him to be doing things. Kevin Cheveldayoff has 2 things. He's also got Kyle Connor, and one sort of affects the other. He's got $15 million in cap space. He's not going to sign each to identical contracts. They're not going to go that way. So now he's got to figure out how this balances. He's got wiggle room next year, and he can make this happen. Would someone take would Laine or Connor take a 1-year deal? No, I know exactly. You're shaking your head, Russ. What Connor Hellebuck did for a massive payday later. They've already established themselves. Hellebuck hadn't, so it's not going to work.
Right.
Laine.
The only thing, there's one thing I have heard, although he's playing tonight in Edmonton. I have heard, and I was given a text about this yesterday, that there is some smoke around Brian Little. But Brian Little has an NTC, and it gets easier next summer. But that would be the one you could move that would make all the room happen. And that is sort of, it came from someone he was bang on last year about Morrissey.
Well, it makes sense. We did.
It makes sense, but you'd have to get Little to agree.
Right.
Is he somebody that the Jets can afford to lose now?
Yeah, I think they can.
I mean, if Roslovic can move up into a high,
Roslovic is not. He's not a second line center at the NHL.
Not second line, no.
No, he's not second. The guy you could move up is Perreault, although he doesn't like center, he prefers wing. But you could move up Kopp or Lowry, because the line that didn't exist anymore because Tanev was gone was that trio: Lowry, Kopp, and Tanev. Now you've got 2 guys who can play center, and Andrew Kopp can play center quite competently. And he may not have the pedigree of Little. He may not be a true goal scorer in the way Little was in junior coming in, but he can distribute the puck and he can go in and retrieve the puck, which is huge when you're playing with a guy like Laine and Ehlers. Huge.
Yeah.
And the benefit for, like, if one of them will take a 1-year deal is that Kulikov's deal, which is 4.3, expires after this year.
Yeah.
So that opens up the space. I just looked at they're $59.5 million next year with 13 players under contract. If the cap goes up, that gives you 24 million in cap space.
Yeah. Right. So the other thing too is right now there's no Dustin Byfuglien on the roster.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation on this. Some stuff is really dumb. But basically Paul Maurice came out and said yesterday or the day before, nothing sinister. And then yesterday he said, I'm not talking about this till the next press release comes out. Then you'll have something to talk about. Like, he just squashed it, which is good. The rumor going around that I think is not awful or anything to talk about is that he may have just came back and said, got in, did a couple skates, and his head might not be right about, it might be that time. And you guys know this. You get back in, run your workouts, but you haven't really been skating. You start in and you're like, I don't know. You question it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you might be taking some time to think about retirement.
And he's also the off-season guy that isn't the hardest trainer either. Let's be real.
Russ, what he also didn't do was play one game in the Beauty League this year either,
Right.
which is he's done the last 2 years. So that's the speculation guess.
Okay.
But there you go.
It could be a family thing. We don't know.
It could be a family thing. We hope everything.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like anything incredibly sinister. I mean, the first thought that came to my mind was like, okay, send him away to like, seriously train with somebody for a week or so because they need to get him into shape. That
you need your one-on-one time.
Yeah, and that might be the case. We don't know. The NHL is really good about people who have drug stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And now I don't think there's any of that's happening here. Although the NHL is really good about keeping that stuff quiet when it does happen. It does happen a lot more than
and apparently they're really good about not suspending people for
when they do cash them.
Which sorry, just had to bring up for a second. Suspending Evgeny Kuznetsov for 3 games is pathetic. Absolutely.
And I'm going to log off.
Okay.
The only reason, Mike, they're circumventing the CBA in a way, so they couldn't make it a long suspension because they knew that the PA would fight it and Kuznetsov wouldn't agree to it. But at least they're able to do something. But
you know how impotent they look when a guy gets suspended by the IIHF, which isn't exactly the patron saint of professional organizations. When they suspend him for 4 years,
well,
and the NHL suspended him for 3 games.
I know, but they have different rules. I mean, like the fact of the matter is, the NHL punishes performance enhancing drugs in a big way, but they don't. But recreational drugs, they've always treated differently, and that's just the way the NHL has been. And you can change that in the CBA for sure, and maybe they will. But if anything, that could change in different kinds of ways because of legalized marijuana in Canada and all kinds of things like that. I think you could see big changes in the CBA as to how drug stuffs in general is handled. But as of what they have right now, talking to people like Bill Daly, this is really the only option that they had, which is like they have like almost like an appearance of evil clause in the NHL where they can say, okay, you did something that's wrong, and they can suspend you for that, but not much more than like 3 games. That's
because it just looks bad for the league. And honestly, I'll be honest, the Caps didn't do anything.
No,
and that's the other thing. The Caps have a lot more leeway than the NHL does, actually.
The Caps could have done something. They did nothing.
Yeah, that's for sure, and that's an issue. And I don't know. You hope the guy gets some help.
Yeah, that's the ultimate hope.
That's really what I'd like to see happen here.
Now, we should talk about today is a big. What's that?
No, I said tick, tick, tick.
Oh, today is a big day.
Yeah, no, it's a big day for the CBA negotiations, for sure. And
did I not say at least correctly that they were going to draw this out to the last minute of the last hour? Because technically it ran out yesterday, but because it's not a business day, it's bleeding over until today. But I told you this was going to go to the last possible minute.
Well, let's also remember the fun of deadlines and the NHL and the NHLPA. Like, this is the actual reality that barely exists at all. Okay, so there's barely any deadline really with the NHL and the NHLPA when it comes to. I mean, you could sit there and say that this is what all they have to do is sit there, and if they're talking around the table and saying things are going well, we'll give you guys till Wednesday. We'll give you Thursday. It doesn't really much matter.
I don't think they'll do that this time, though.
I don't think they will either, but I think that giving them till today is not a big deal. They have been talking. They have been trying to get things. I've heard everything from the fact that they're getting close to a long-term deal, which would really be great for them because then they would have a chance to actually announce a big deal together that would really enhance their ability to get their next television contract.
That all sounds great, Ek, but we all have scars from the last.
Of course, no. There's no reason to not think that
my brain will not go along with that.
The sky is falling down with these 2 people too, because I agree with you. I mean, we've lived through too much.
Well, something Bob McKenzie said on the radio a couple hours ago is the scenario that I sort of thought of. Like, you got the players and the Players Association negotiating right now with this deadline. If all of a sudden the players just say we're not opting out, what motivate? I mean, there's motivation there, obviously, about the new TV contract. But what motivation does the league have when now they have 2 more years to work with it? It's like they could basically say, "Oh, okay, there's no impetus here. We'll see you in a couple of years." They could do that.
It's more than that, though, Mike. I think they're doing that because they know a TV deal is coming and the gambling revenue is coming. Right. So they don't want to rock the boat on that. Now the
The
players
NHLPA feels like they have some power because of those things. They feel like they feel like they can push this a
well,
little.
because again, they've made the players more money just by signing those deals, like they have.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
That's a reality. That's not side. That is a reality. So they feel good about it to the point where it's like, look, this is what's coming. Why not go 3 years and see how it goes?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I know they've been talking about ways of getting around the escrow and stuff like that. I think they would like to get some kind of like solution to at least one of their problems.
Yeah, you know what the solution is? A flat cap. You guys want a flat cap? No escrow? No problem.
No, I know.
They don't want that either.
No, I know. And there's no the escrow really is not an easy fix because of the way this is set up
Right.
year to year to year. And it's really not a big deal either. The players make the escrow into such a giant thing. It's not. It really isn't most of the time. I mean, I think they've gotten it back every year, but once where they didn't get all of it back, but most of it back. So it's really not like something they should be sitting back and like freaking out about. But but what Bob McKenzie said was if the NHLPA announces today it's waiving its right to reopen the CBA, we are guaranteed 3 years of labor peace.
Right.
Basically, so it wouldn't expire. The CBA would not expire until September of 2022. So that gives us 3 seasons. But if the NHL does choose to reopen it today, it doesn't definitely mean that there will be a lockout in 1 year, but it certainly means it opens the door to that possibility.
No, it holds the league's feet to the fire because now there's a deadline of next September.
Right.
And that's what McKenzie was saying. It's like, okay, if they don't opt out, then there's 3 years and there's no impetus there other than what you were saying, the TV deal, the certain issues. But they're not looking at the specter of a lockout happening next year, so there's less motivation for them to get the deal done. Now, I'm sure if they see concessions, if they see negotiations going in the direction that they want it to go, then they'll keep going. But if all of a sudden the players ask for something completely out of the ordinary, they can say, okay, well, we got 2 more years, we got 3 more years, so we'll talk to you in June of 2022.
Yeah, my worry is that the players reopen it and everybody goes, oh, don't worry, we're going to be negotiating throughout the year. And, and then all of a sudden next year comes around and there's no urgency. We don't hear anything, as we never hear anything. And then all of a sudden, like in 2020, in July, we start hearing, well, and that's what happens every time.
Yeah.
It always comes down to that. And it always is like this last minute thing because, again, like these contract negotiations, there's discussion, but it's never enough to head it off at the pass. This is one chance they actually have to head it off at the pass.
Yeah. And this is a rare instance where the players actually, I mean, since Donald Fear has been there, he's never really been negotiating from any position of strength at all.
Right.
So I can't imagine he's not going to want to take advantage of that, like in some way, shape, or form, because he's always been like, the players actually do have the position of strength right now a little bit.
Right, but you know what? The one thing we're not talking about, we've talked about the players, we've talked about the owners. It's the fans we need to talk about because they're the ones that are all tweeting and holding their breath because they're the ones that invest in this game. They're the ones that get season tickets. There are people that have businesses built around this. Like they're the ones that are legitimately worried.
Right. Yeah. No, and they should be. And we've never had a lockout or anything like this in the age of social media, right? So this is going to be a completely different kind of world. They will lose it.
We would have seen Bob Goodenow tweeting.
No, we wouldn't have. But what we will see is a hell of a lot more pressure because there's a lot more stuff being said.
I mean, 2012 was the age of social media, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is now.
No, it definitely existed, but I mean that in 2012, it was 2011 that Bob McKenzie came up to me and said, "Would you mind telling people to follow me on Twitter?"
Right.
So let's remember that we're still early.
Right.
That's kind of ridiculous now in retrospect.
Yeah.
I wonder if I should ask him to do the same thing now.
We should talk about some of the contracts other than Marner that were signed. I mean, the one that Provorov. I mean, you called it. You said he was going to sign that day. He did. Yeah. That deal was, I think, when you look at Werenski's deal, 3 years at $5 million, getting 3 more years of Provorov for $1,750,000 more, I think was, pretty good. So I think both sides should be happy. The one that I know a lot of people are pissed off about is McAvoy, because again, the Bruins, they get McAvoy locked up on a 3-year bridge for $100,000 less than Werenski, whereas some people I think probably think McAvoy is a better all-around defenseman. Werenski's probably more gifted offensively. I mean, they're both really good, but they get him for less. And this, he got the backloaded $7.3 million in the third year, but Chara will be retired. Krejci will be a UFA or retired at the end of this deal, and they can pay him whatever they want at that point. It's again the Bruins, they get Marchand, they get Pasternak, they get Bergeron locked up on these friendly deals, and this is a friendly deal.
No, but this isn't. The Bruins didn't benefit from anything other than McAvoy not having a lot of time of service in. Right. That's the issue here, and that's where it became a thing where all of a sudden McKenzie's tweeting like, hey, he's a 10-12 C, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Mm-hmm. Like, we don't know all these different.
Yeah, I mean, to further this argument, Mike, that you're making, is this was put out by Cap Friendly, and this was pretty amazing when I saw it. That Bergeron, Pasternak, Marchand, and McAvoy are a total. We just talked about the least salary cap situation, of like $40 million for those 4 players. Now here you're looking at those 4 players: Bergeron, Pasternak, Marchand, and McAvoy, $24.5 million per season for the next 3 years. So
when you sign them, that's the key,
right?
Sign them at the right time. You
timed it right. I mean, and they've done it, and they put this thing together. I was surprised that McAvoy didn't get more, but I think at the end of the day, McAvoy really wanted to come into camp. I think he could have held out for a lot more. He could have done what Marner
really couldn't. No, I mean, he really couldn't actually, because he doesn't have enough time of service. And they were like, listen, Werenski has more games in than you. You're not getting paid more than him. And the McAvoy would have lost that. Like, no team would have come to his aid. Nothing would have happened. That is the situation where he just Mike, are you rebooting Windows 95? I just wanted to...
No, it's Vista.
Oh, Vista. Okay.
Just follow what Clippy says, Mike.
But this is just a situation where McAvoy got as much as he could possibly get for the time of service he has in and the kind of player he is.
Clippy says it looks like you think Marner's deal is terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, no, sorry.
I'm logging on to CompuServe.
You're trying to play God. Here, click here. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I mean, we still don't have, all that is said and done. We still have Brandon Carlo they've got to deal with, which is, it's a big deal because he's one of their top 4 defensemen.
Right.
Where not for McAvoy, a much bigger deal.
Yeah, but they believe that they have the room right now to sign. I mean, right now they have let's see here, $3 million in cap space. They probably could get if Carlo is amenable to a 2-year or 3-year bridge, like McAvoy, then they probably can get him for, because he's not a big offensive guy. He's more a defensive stay-at-home type. But
right.
I'll tell you the guy right now, Eck, in the entire league. He's not deserving of the highest salary, but he is going to face the most criticism, and that's Travis Konechny, and he's already starting to face.
Yeah, we got to talk about that because, so Travis Konechny is not in Philadelphia, and I will tell you why I think that is. Because I think a little while ago, remember there was some stuff that was leaking out that Travis Konechny's deal was almost done. I think that Konechny's agent realizes the kind of guy Konechny is, and if he's anywhere near Philadelphia, Konechny will just be a problem because he wants to play.
I agree with that.
He's biting, he's chomping at the bit. I believe his agent's telling him you're not allowed to go to the United States until we get this done, because I think that basically the other stuff that happened was felt to be a little bit of coming from Travis Konechny. And I think the concept here is, okay, we are going to make sure that you don't, because Konechny just wants to, he's not, this is so out of his wheelhouse, this business type stuff.
It is, but I'll tell you the problem that's killing him. The problem look, I believe Travis Konechny wants to play yesterday, but the problem that's killing him is, and this is where some of the even the younger writers in Philly are getting a crash course of Elaine Vigneault. Because, Elaine Vigneault basically said, hey, Nolan Patrick's here. He may be hurt, but he's learning the system. It's better than a guy not here, not learning anything.
Right.
And if you think about it, the part of Vigneault's system that is going to benefit Konechny the most is the getting the puck out when you're on the defensive side and getting it up the ice safely, which is something Konechny has trouble with. Right. This is what's going to cause the biggest rift between him and the coach, because if he doesn't do that flawlessly, he's not going to be a top liner to start the season. I'm telling you.
Yeah. I think that this is going to get done very quickly. Within the next.
Very quickly would have been. He doesn't.
No, I know it's not done yet. I'm just saying that I think. But you're saying that I think is very much pushing Konechny to push his agent to because he realizes that this is a little bit of you got to listen to your agent, but at some point he also is competing with Farabee and Frost, who are both going to be maybe they're not at Konechny's level yet, but they're not far behind. And from what I've heard, at least I know Frost is hurt, but people are just loving Farabee. I talked to somebody the other day that compared Farabee to Paul Stastny, like in a lot of ways, like that said that was the kind of player he thought he was, and really just completely like an incredibly smart player who's able to do everything on the ice. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff. When you start hearing comparisons, like to players like that from people within the organization, it really does put the pressure on Travis Konechny to get in there because he was slated to, or we thought at least to be on that first line.
Well, one thing I'm a little surprised at is that in the wake, Marner's deal happened on Friday, and we haven't really seen much of a budge in Kyle Connor, Kachuk, Rantanen, Besser. I thought that there might be a trickle-down effect, like with Werenski, where after Werenski signed, Provorov got done fairly quickly.
Yeah, no, there wasn't going to be because there wasn't going to be.
Can I say one more thing before we switch the subject on Konechny? This is a key point. Right now, we're in a log jam with a lot of preseason games. So, as an example, he's not playing tonight. There's no way he's playing tomorrow on the island.
Right.
That's 2 games already he's going to miss.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then the next one is on Thursday against the Bruins. If he's not in by tomorrow, he's not playing that game either.
Right. He might not even be playing that game anyway if he's in by tomorrow.
And then the next game is on Saturday against the Rangers.
Right. No, they have to get him in. They really do.
Like he probably has to get in by Wednesday to play that Saturday game.
And I do think that'll happen. I do think that's basically what'll happen. But that's making a bit of a leap because I don't know that for sure. And these things are changing minute to minute to minute. So
sure.
I don't have any way of knowing that at all. But yeah, it's a big deal. As far as the Marner thing, I don't think anybody in the NHL looks at that deal and says that deal makes any sense for any of these other RFAs.
Well, Joe, let's say this: Joe Sakic hopes it doesn't make any sense for him because I'm sure that Rantanen wants to make $10 million a year.
Right, but like I said, the difference is that none of those other GMs went through what the Leafs went through last year. And last year's Nylander thing makes Marner's thing makes that more viable for them. If that doesn't happen last year, then we're looking at these guys. They're not. No one's going to give Rantanen. No one's going to give him close to that number. They're going to be, if none. I don't think any of them are over 10 million. And I think that and even though I think that I honestly think that some of them are as good, if not better, than Marner, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that I'd rather have Braden Point on my team than Mitch Marner, but he's not going to get that number. But then again, he's also in Florida. Which you have the tax issue, so that helps him too. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of different ways that this cuts through. The interesting thing about Tampa, I don't know if you saw, Hal Drouin was just like throwing all kinds of praise out for Nick Schultz and Ryan Poehling down there and saying those guys are ridiculous.
Oh, Nick Suzuki, no.
Nick Suzuki and Ryan Poehling,
and they have Drouin playing with Max Domi right now, so I'm sure that's something that if that happens in the regular season, I don't know how much they played together last season during the regular season, but if they can get that pairing going,
it's a big hit.
I would pump the brakes a little though on Suzuki in the sense that I think he needs to play in the AHL because I just worry that on the physical end of the game, you've got to see what he could sort of handle. Paling's a big, strong kid who, in the role he's going to play, Not a problem. Like I'm telling you, there's no problem. I saw him playing a couple weeks ago, just goofing around on the ice, and I could already, because I've watched him in college, I could already see the difference.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if he comes in and scores 20, 25 goals. Wouldn't shock me at all. Now, Suzuki has that skill, but I don't know if he's strong enough yet physically. Like he was a little on the thin side, not even on the thin side, just a little bit on the weak side, I felt like, for an NHL player. Doesn't matter if you're thin. You got to be like Marner. That first year was probably pushing the bounds of weakness, but he got past it because of his great skating. Suzuki is not Marner.
Right.
He's a really great player though, but he's not Marner. That's the thing.
While Eck guzzles his vodka and tea, we can take some questions.
It's keeping my voice from going completely crazy
in the chat. Dan D asks, since Darren Ferris is also Taylor.
This is $1 million question. This is a good one, Dan. And
this is a great question.
How do you think that contract will go?
Taylor Hall came up with some really interesting quotes the other day. I actually am a huge fan of Taylor Hall as a person. Like I think Taylor Hall is one of my favorites out there. He just is no BS to him. He's absolutely like he doesn't play games, and what he said was really surprising because he said, we're not going to really probably talk. He actually said we could talk about it throughout the year, which is also really surprising because people don't say that, right? But his big comment was, saying, I think the Devils, they deserve some more time to see what they've got in me as well. That's something a player never says.
That's true.
And when you hear that, you think to yourself a couple things with that. You think to yourself, okay, is that just Taylor Hall being Taylor Hall? And in a way it is. But or is that also Taylor Hall kind of setting things up for like, okay, maybe the Devils don't really want me here, and kind of like, doing the my wife calls like the fade, like the slow breakup. Mm-hmm. Like this is like the real, like, my wife said when she was dating people before me, of course.
Yeah, it's not you, it's me.
She always hated bringing up people, but would fade them out. And this Taylor Hall thing feels like a bit of a fade, like, okay, just throwing that a little bit out there. Maybe, maybe the Devils don't think I'm worth what I'm going to be.
I think he's stalling it. I think Taylor Hall's stalling until the regular season starts, and he wants to see what this team looks like before he signs on the dotted line. That's what I think. I think he's got every right to do that.
Well, Russ, I also think he's waiting not only for what the team looks like, but also if he puts up, say, really good numbers in the first couple months. He's not exactly dealing from a point of late great leverage since he played less than 30 games last year and had a major surgery.
Yeah,
so he wants to show that MVP form.
That's fair.
And if he does, then he can say, I want $10 million.
I mean, here's a note about the Devils too. So Hughes is starting tonight on center. He's playing with Gusev. It was going to be Simmons, but now Simmons is scratched. Simmons now has some sort of slight injury, but I'm telling you, this is now the story of Wayne Simmons because he is now going to be this guy that can't play 80 games. I don't even know if he can play 70 just because of the way he plays.
Yeah.
Okay. Dean Youngblood asks, is Nolan Patrick's health issues concussion related? He's had 2 officially.
All right. I will tell you this. I asked around about this injury. Nobody thought it was a concussion. I heard other things, so nobody thought concussion. So I'm going to say I don't think that's the case.
I don't think it is either from people I've talked to, but I will throw the caveat out there that concussions in Philadelphia are something that, they are always incredibly weird about.
Right.
So you won't hear about it if it is a concussion.
No, but I wasn't. I was talking to writers, Zach.
Yeah.
And
I
so
don't think it is. I
don't believe it is.
But the fans have every right to ask that question. Because
the reason I could tell you, here's another reason. He is still skating. If he
wouldn't skate,
he would not be skating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is something though to Nolan Patrick to like. You do have to start asking yourself a little bit about this guy's, durability. I mean,
not yet. Not until the regular season starts.
He's got to play a lot. He's got to play like 65 to 70 games this year.
That's fine. I get it.
If he doesn't, that's an issue.
Okay. Thomas Smith asks, is it possible for one of the RFAs yet to be signed to be traded in a player-for-player deal? Yes, because you're trading his rights. You're not trading, if a player is unsigned, like Konechny could be traded for a player under contract. It's just that team acquiring him, he's still a restricted free agent. So
I think of all the guys, right, he is the most likely that could happen because he is the lowest salary for somebody else to sort of acquire and have to sign. And I think, and of course, I don't have any inside knowledge or anything, but I just get, because of the way the coach is and the way the team is and how everything is off and running quickly, and everybody's been talking about that, Fletcher included, that if we were going to be a month down the road and let's say he wasn't signed, I think they might entertain that.
Yeah, I mean, there's 11 restricted free agents yet unsigned right now, and the only other one, I mean, there was talk about Julius Honka requesting to be traded, so I think he's probably in the same boat as Konechny. Is Anthony D'Angelo going to be traded by the Rangers, Russ?
No, he'll sign a 1-year deal.
Right, but most of the rest of them are either borderline guys like Saku Manalainen or big stars like Kachuk or Rantanen. So, you know, those situations, it may take some time, but they're going to take, you know, it's going to.
It's very it's pretty unlikely that it's pretty unlikely that any of these guys get moved around. I mean, I think you're going to see,
but it is possible.
It is. No, it's definitely possible because at some point, you know, you could really see it. Like another guy like Brandon Perlini, people aren't talking to him. He's sort of like in the same boat as Konechny.
Right.
You know, there's guys out there that you know, I could see somebody like that will be moved. You know, like that's.
I'm going to give you a scenario, Ek. Yeah. Let's say you're Lane Vigneault. Let's say we're 3 preseason games in. Frost is playing now. I've seen Farabee for these games. I've also got guys like Andreoff or whatever. And I say to you, hey, I know Konechny was a top liner. If we trade him for another asset or some other player, is that going to kill your plan for this year? What do you think he would say?
No, because he's not even in his plan right now.
That's the problem.
You know, I mean, as a new coach, you know, he's got to play that hard line. Like he can't give he can't give anything to, you know, he can't give any benefit to what happened last year. He can't. The whole idea of it is a fresh start for everybody.
Now, starting guitarist asks, will the injuries like Arizona last night cause players to ask for shorter preseasons? Oliver Ekman-Larsson got hurt. It's a day-to-day, according to this report that I just read, so it's not anything serious. But, I mean, that's the trend in the NFL right now.
It was a dirty game last night. Did you watch any of it?
I did not.
I watched the whole game. It was a dirty, dirty game. Like, they actually – I was amazed. Pasternak was killing people out there, like throwing his body around.
Is it because these guys were finally getting a chance?
Pacioretty. I'm sorry. Pacioretty.
I was going to say, it can't be Pasternak.
Pacioretty was throwing his body around.
Well, I mean, is it a situation where they needed to blow off steam because they've just been itching to get back? I mean, it'll probably happen tonight.
But he was, like, hitting some people. I mean, and you know what really impressed me in that game is there were, like, four defensemen from Chicago, from the Wolves that were playing for the Knights in that game.
Right.
And they all looked really good. Like they have
some good players.
Their defense is really solid.
Zach Whitecloud.
Whitecloud's really good. I'm telling you.
Whitecloud was pretty good. I'm trying to think of the guy who really impressed me the most. Wasn't Whitecloud, but he was good. But they have definite depth there. The person I
will say this to answer the question. I don't think that'll be the case because you only have to play like 5 or 6 regulars in a game.
Right.
It's technically 8, but apparently you're allowed to like petition with the other teams. So if the other, I heard about this, which is kind of crazy. Which seems, I always thought the 8 was like, okay, at least put 8 out there for the fans who are paying the money to come.
Right.
That's all. But apparently the 8 is like, we're not going to like put too many of our NHLers on, and your NHLers. So if you both only have like 5 to play, if you work it out with the other team, that's okay.
All right. Couple quick hitters, and then we'll end the show. Mike asks, who scores more? And it wasn't me. Who scores more points this year, Marner or Tavares? I will say Tavares. I'll say Marner because Marner will assist on almost every Tavares goal.
Right.
They're both on that first power play, and Marner will set up other players. Not to say that Tavares is not a good playmaker because he is, but last year Marner had 94 points. I think Tavares had in the 80s. So I think it'll be Marner.
I go Marner too.
Ack.
Probably Marner because Tavares just doesn't have to really put up points to prove himself, where Marner will.
Yeah. Last, how many points do you think Hughes and Kakko put up respectively? I said Hughes will score 60. I think Kakko will probably be in the high 40s to low 50s.
I'm gonna go 50 for Jack Hughes, and I'm gonna go like 58 for Kakko.
Yeah, I was going to say 45 and 55 for Hughes and Kakko. I think that it's going to be, Hughes is going to be phenomenal, but
not even
right away. to be
But
like.
I think Kako early on could have a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I think that's for sure, and I think that and Kako also I think has more to work with a little bit.
Oh, there's definitely that's definite.
Tomorrow we'll double up on team previews. We'll do Columbus and Colorado tomorrow.
Unless we're talking about the lockout.
Yeah, well, I mean that'll be one of the stories, but unless there's a big
if they reopen it, it will be half the show.
Yes, okay.
The internet will explode.
Yeah,
the internet, exactly. This is a situation now where Twitter will explode if that's and it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever the answer is, but if that's the answer, Twitter will explode. We're back, like you said, in 11. Twitter was only a couple of years old.
Yeah. I mean, the NHL really doesn't want to reopen it, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think the NHL could. I thought the compromise. The last thing I'll say is the compromise of like, okay, I thought I saw it put out there that to just keep the salary cap at 81.5 for the next 2 years after this one, so that there's no escrow, is the stupidest thing the NHLPA could ever possibly do. Like,
I'll tell you, there's a couple of tactics here that I think they should employ. They're in Chicago, right? Is that where they're doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. For one thing, you should not let them order lunch. It takes too long. There's too many people. And think about how much more unproductive you are the minute you get lunch in you than before you get lunch.
And Russ, if they order that deep dish,
how long it takes to get a deep dish?
Yeah,
if
they order that deep dish, they'll be ready for an afternoon lunch.
I'm telling you, it will kill the momentum.
Yeah, I think I agree. This is going to be. There's just what is the benefit of the NHLPA? Okay, we don't have an escrow, but we kept our salary cap at 81.5. Like, how, in what world is that a good idea?
Here's the thing though, X. So let's talk about this from a PR standpoint. Is it better to put out information at 5 o'clock? Is it better to put out this information at 9 o'clock?
5 o'clock, no question asked.
Right, because you don't want it to bleed into the game coverage, right?
No, not that. The main. I mean that. Yeah, that's going to happen. But I think the main thing is the most people on the internet are on the internet from like 10 a.m. Eastern to like 2 p.m. Eastern in that area.
Supposed to be working.
And because people are screwing around at work, right? So that's when the internet explodes. Like if you do it at 5 o'clock, I mean you'll get
Although with a Monday Night Football, there's going to be a lot of people on the internet tonight.
Yeah, they're on the internet for that, but you're not gonna see the normal like people won't just go nuts like
complaining how the Jets are going to lose.
All right, that's about all the time we have for today, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.